I was told moving to Idaho was gonna be hell, but it's gonna be totally worth it. And the guy that told me that was completely right. So I'm gonna cover the tips and tricks to moving to Idaho and how to make it way easier on yourself and how to save an insane amount of money and almost make it free to actually move here. And we're getting after it right now. When I was making arrangements to move to Idaho and I was calling the storage unit facility, I was talking to the gentleman there and explained I was moving from California. He told me he moved from California too, and then he stopped me and he said, look, moving to Idaho is gonna be hell, but it's gonna be totally worth it. You just gotta get through it. And man, was he right. So I'm gonna cover what that process was like, what we did to ultimately make the move here to try to save as much money as we can. I'm gonna go through all the options of maybe you aren't worried about saving money and kind of the full service options, but towards the end, I'm gonna cover exactly how I made the move and saved a significant amount of money and almost made it free to move here. Not zero, but close to it. So real quick, normally I would go through here and tell you that my name's Curtis Chism and my team and I absolutely love helping people relocate here. I'd ask you to subscribe to this channel and like the video because we're dropping new videos all the time, but I'm not gonna do all that. You already know that from the other videos that I put out there. So we're just gonna get right after what it's like moving here to Idaho, how you can make it a smooth move for you, just like I did when I moved from California. I went through the struggles for you. It was not that easy, but I made it easier than it certainly could have been for myself and my family. And I'm here to help guide you through that to make it just as absolutely smooth as possible. So let's get after some of the best ways to move here to the Boise, Idaho area. Well, first up is to consolidate as much as you possibly can. So I was moving from a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a 2-car garage, and the garage was fairly full of our life's belongings. We have 3 children, so they've got tons of toys, bikes, that kind of thing. And I used to be a finished carpenter quite a long time ago, but that's a hobby I've carried with me for a long time. And I have a lot of tools. Now, some of those tools I just don't use anymore because I had a workshop from a long time ago. They've aged and I just don't have the time, unfortunately, to do that as much, but I still have a lot of carpentry tools that I want to take with me. So I ended up selling off a lot of those tools. My big table saw that experienced some damage due to something that happened to it. I got rid of that. I got rid of my dust collector, etc. So I really consolidated down. And basically, we ultimately, like I'm going to get into, wanted to make sure that we could fit all of our stuff into a 26-foot U-Haul. So we had to make sure that all fit, and we basically said, if it doesn't fit, it's not going. And we really didn't want to leave stuff behind, so we had to figure out ways to get rid of it. So the first thing we did was put as much as we possibly could onto OfferUp and Facebook Marketplace in order to sell a lot of our belongings. So we took a really hard look at everything we owned and decided whether or not we wanted to keep it. So there's a popular organizing technique out there called from Marie Kondo, and so we KonMari'd our stuff. You know, does it bring me joy or not? So we went through that kind of process. I mean, we got rid of so much stuff: dressers, couches, kept our bed because we love our Tempur-Pedic bed, but a lazy boy, outdoor furniture, etc. And again, some of my tools that I had for over 20 years. So it was really, really hard to get rid of some of these things, but we had to do it in order to consolidate down to get as much as we possibly could into a 26-foot trailer so we could make the move. So that's gonna be the number one thing you can do, is take a hard look at everything you got and try to consolidate as much as you can. Now, especially if you're moving into, say, a brand new home, you're really gonna want probably ultimately some nice new furniture when you move in here. So that being said, let me give you a quick tip and just let you know, Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp, they do exist here. However, because there are so many people moving to this area, they don't function quite as well in terms of getting quality furniture because most people are moving here and trying to snap it up as fast as they can as well. So if you are looking to relocate here and if you like IKEA and you have an IKEA near you, I would highly recommend buying IKEA furniture before you move up here and keeping it in its box, because it consolidates and packs so well that then you can bring that up with you and then, of course, build it and assemble it in your new home. So that's a really great trick that we wish we had done, and we just didn't know that until we got up here and realized, man, there just is not a lot of good furniture options here as far as getting, nice used furniture. So of course you can buy brand new furniture. There's plenty of options for that. But even right now with, the COVID supply shortages, etc., it's still hard to get brand new furniture. I was just talking to a gentleman the other day and he ordered a table. It took him 6 months to get his nice Amish-made dining room table. So if you can do that, when you do that IKEA trick, get it up here and then get it assembled, you're gonna save yourself a lot of time and trouble for when you come up here. Now, the other thing I did too, just because we were being extreme about how we were consolidating, was we actually sold our car before we moved up here too. We just didn't want to drive 2 cars, they didn't want to tow it. And we just decided we could get more money for it back in California than ultimately driving it up here, running it through the winter seasons, etc., and then selling it. So we just decided to go ahead and sell that in San Diego. Okay, the second thing is going to be, if you're moving up here early, before you're actually moving into a home, is to rent an Airbnb. So that's exactly what we did for about 2 months before we actually moved into our new home. Now, we bought a brand new construction home, so it was not completed until we had been here for a couple months. So it was about 5 months of being under contract with the home before we closed on it. But we wanted to get up to Idaho, start to get the lay of the land, start exploring, start getting settled in before we actually closed on the home. So we went ahead and moved up here about 2 months before closing on the home. So there's a couple techniques to this now too. So because you're moving into an Airbnb and it's a temporary situation, you can save yourself some money there, because you probably don't need as big of a house as what you're ending up purchasing. So we again just went into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome with a very small backyard and smaller living quarters. And we just weren't that worried about it because there's so much to do outdoors. So we spent tons and tons of time going to the river, going to the mountains, and just having a great time outside. Now, that was actually a big cost savings factor for us as well, because I was actually paying more for my rent in San Diego than I was for the short-term rental Airbnb here in Boise. So it's kind of crazy to think that the cost of living was so much less for the house that I was actually saving money by renting a short-term rental, but I was saving about $300 per month just on the rental of the Airbnb. And then when you factor in utilities, it was about another $400, about $450 a month. So all in, about $750 a month in savings that I wasn't having to pay out by being in that Airbnb. So over 2 months, I saved about $1,500 by renting that Airbnb instead of staying in San Diego and continuing to pay that higher rent while waiting for the home to be completed. So that's gonna tie into how I'm saved a lot of money here that I'm getting after here in just in a minute here as we move into the next phase of how to actually make the move up here. The other benefit too, real quick, of being in an Airbnb is it does allow you to move up here, get comfortable with the area. You're in a furnished Airbnb. You don't have to spend all your time setting up your new home, and you can just go out and start exploring. So I would recommend, if you can, coming up here, even maybe before you purchase, get an Airbnb for a couple months, figure out exactly where you want to be, so you make sure you end up moving to the right area, whether that's Eagle, Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell, Kuna, or Boise itself. Of course, you can get so much information online from my videos, etc., that sometimes there's just no replacement for actually being here and seeing exactly what it's like to live here in an Airbnb for a short period of time. Now, again, if you're moving new construction, go under contract 6 months and then close on it. You probably want to get up here in Airbnb. All right, number 3, how do you actually make the move? That's the big question that everyone wants to know. How do I actually get all my stuff up there? Well, I hinted at it earlier that I ultimately used a U-Haul, and that ultimately was not the cheapest method, but it was the best method for myself and my family to actually make the move. And I'm gonna go through a few of the options here, and then you can decide for yourself what makes the best sense for you. Okay, first up is to hire a full service moving company. So depending on what level of service you're going to want, those are gonna probably cost anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 to make the move. So if you just want them to pick your stuff up and take it directly here, you're probably gonna be in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $12,000 just to do that one-way move. Now, if you want them to actually pack up all your belongings, move it here, maybe even store it for you for some period of time, and then ultimately unpack it for you, you're certainly gonna be on the higher end of that, at least 20, if not more, maybe even $25,000, $30,000 for a full service move. So it just depends on how much service you want to have that, added cost. So That being said too, a lot of moving companies end up kind of quoting you lower prices, and they actually see your stuff and how much room it takes up, and then they charge you more. So be aware, could cost a little more than what they quote you up front. The next option is going to be to hire a one-way trailer service. So I work with a guy up here who has a 30-foot trailer, a couple of them, a couple drivers, and his specialty is relocating people here into Idaho, especially from California, Oregon, and Washington. Now, depending on where you're moving from, and this is the current price, and it might be different depending on where you're coming from, but it's about $5,000 just to pay him for his service. He's not going to load it for you. He's going to show up. He gives you about 4 hours to load the truck, and you got to get your stuff in as quick as you can. They help make sure it's loaded correctly. And then of course you have to drive up there or fly and then get it unloaded again once you're up there. So there's a lot of stress involved with that because you got to make sure it's loaded and get up there as quick as you can and unload it, that next day. So not a wonderful option, but it can be an option if you don't want to worry about driving a U-Haul or your trailer to get up there with all your things. But it is going to be a little bit more costly because you're paying for that service. Another option is going to be U-Pack. So U-Pack can be a good option if you're moving directly into a home. So what U-Pack does is they're gonna drop a trailer off at your house. They're gonna charge you for exactly the lineal foot that you use in that trailer. You're gonna have about 3 days to load that trailer. Then they're gonna come and pick it up and move it up there and drop it off at your house. And they're gonna give you 3 days to unload that. Now, if you're trying to time it with, hey, I'm moving an Airbnb first, I'm not moving into my house directly, that may not be the best option for you because there's no extra storage. They can't drop it at a storage unit because it's gonna sit there for 3 days. Storage unit's not gonna let you do that. But that's gonna cost you also probably in the neighborhood of $6,000 when it's all said and done. But again, that's gonna vary quite a bit depending on where you're coming from and how much you have. But for our scenario, that's about what it was gonna cost. But because we were going to Airbnb first, didn't work for us. Now, next I looked into different options for renting a U-Haul, a Penske, or a budget truck. And I looked into one-way options, round trip options, and then redriving back up there, etc. And I ran all my numbers on a spreadsheet. I'm happy to send you that spreadsheet too, so you can run these numbers yourself and decide what's most cost effective. So just drop a comment below or shoot me an email and let me know, and I'll get that out to you. So ultimately, again, it was gonna cost about $5,000 or $6,000 in order to do a one-way rental from San Diego or even a round trip rental, get all my stuff up there, drive my truck up there. So it was still a bit costly. We could do it. Like, okay, man, what do we do? Well, ultimately, here's what we did. And here's the big tip of how we moved up here for very little money. Ultimately, so I figured out that relocating from San Diego and renting a U-Haul one way from San Diego was quite expensive because lo and behold, a lot of people are moving out of California. So renting a U-Haul from California in any of the big cities, it's probably gonna be really expensive to do that because they have to pay someone to ultimately get it back to California. So you're paying basically double for that. So I figured out that the cheapest option was actually to fly out to Phoenix one way, rent a U-Haul in Phoenix and drive it back to San Diego, load it up, and then do a one-way rental up to Boise. So I had a set number of mileage. I went slightly over on the mileage. I got hit for that a little bit, but all in with renting the U-Haul, that cost me just over $1,600 just for that. And then we add in gas to get up there. Gas at the time was an average of about $5.50 per gallon between the different states I was going through. The storage rental that I had for a couple months, and paying some people a couple $100 to help me unload. It ultimately cost right around $3,000. So not too bad to make the move. So for about $3,000, you could do it. So that did involve 2 days of driving. One, to fly out to Phoenix, drive back to San Diego, which is about a 6-hour drive, load up the truck that night, and then drove up to Boise a day later. So 2 days of actual driving in order to pull that off. So then the other option too is that you could potentially rent a trailer. And this is where I'm saying this is actually the cheapest option. You can rent one-way trailers, or not one-way trailers, you can rent trailers and tow them up if you have a tow vehicle to do it. And then you gotta, for me, it was drive up and get it, bring it back to San Diego, load it, drive up to Boise, bring it back down, and then drive up again. So it's gonna be 4 days of driving, so it was cheaper, but very inconvenient. And now, as I mentioned, the Airbnb only cost me about it saved me $1,500 versus staying in San Diego. So by moving 2 months early, paying about $3,000 total to make the move myself in the U-Haul, and then saving $1,500, it basically cost me about $1,500 to move up to the Boise and Treasure Valley area. So that's gonna be your best savings if you can move up early, save a little money on your Airbnb, and then ultimately rent a U-Haul and maybe go out of state to grab it and then drive it up there. So depending on what you're looking for, full service move or DIY it yourself, there's a huge range, anywhere from $3,000 all the way up to $20,000+. So those are the different ways that you can make the move up to Boise. So hopefully you can see that moving here is not the easiest thing, and it is gonna be hell, but it's totally worth it. And I hope that this video helps you make the smooth move here just that much easier. If you are looking to make the move here, I would absolutely love the opportunity to talk with you, and my team and I would love to help you make that move. You just gotta reach out via phone, text, or email. And if you are looking to explore more about the Boise and Treasure Valley area, you just gotta watch this video right here that covers it, and I'll see you on the next video.